learning about dividing rational numbers. So let's get started. Okay, if everybody can please take out your math notebook and copy down the do now, I'm going to give you about a minute to complete it. Okay, did everybody have a chance to finish or get as much done as they could? Great. So let's read it out loud. At noon on Monday in Minneapolis, the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit was -4. At noon on Tuesday, the temperature was 6 degrees higher. What was the temperature at noon on Tuesday? Can somebody raise their hand and tell me what they got as their answer? 2? Perfect. So 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Does everybody agree? Great. So what you could have done for this was you could have made a number line. And if you had made a number line, -1, -2, -3, -4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you were starting at -4 and you were going 6 degrees higher, you're moving 6 to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is how you would land at 2. Does anybody have any questions about how I got that? Perfect. Okay. So this is just the table of contents of what we're going to go through today. We already went through our do now. We're going to do a little review, some practice, and then we have an exit ticket to wrap up the lesson. So reviewing opposites. Can anybody tell me what an opposite is? The opposite of up is down. The opposite of left, right. The opposite of positive, negative. And the opposite of negative, positive. Perfect. So for problems 1 and 2, we're going to find the value of the expression when x equals 2. So when x equals 2, what we're going to do is we're going to plug 2 in for x. So for the first one that we're looking at, we have a -x, right? So what we're going to do is plug in 2 for the x, and we have -2 as our answer. Does everybody see how I did that? Perfect. So now we're going to look at the next one. We have -x. So if we have a negative x, can anybody tell me what the first step is? To plug in the 2, correct. So we have -2. So now we're going to have to simplify this. So when we're adding one negative to our expression, we're going to have the opposite result. So here we had x equals 2. When we added one negative, we got -2. But what happens when we have 2 negatives? It becomes positive, right? So the answer for 3 is +2, because when we have 2 negatives, that's a negative times a negative, which is always going to equal a positive. Any questions? Okay, great. So now I want you to take a minute to go over problems 3 and 4 and find the value of the expression when x equals -2. So you can work with a partner and let me know when you are done. You'll have your pencils down. number 2, we have negative x. So here the difference is that our initial expression is already a negative 2, right? So we have x equals negative 2. But for number 2, we have a negative x. So we're going to keep that negative, and then we're going to apply the negative 2, substitute that in for x, right? So again, we have a negative times a negative, which is a positive. So positive 2, or you could just write 2. Okay, so now for number 3, we have a negative x. Can anybody tell me what they got for number 3? Perfect. We plugged in the negative 2, right? And then we got a negative 2. Did everybody get the same answer? Does anyone have any questions? We see how we did that? A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative, right? So we're starting to see a pattern. Perfect. Okay. So now let's practice. We're going to complete the table by calculating each quotient with the values of p and q given in that row. So I'm going to walk through the first row with you here, and then you can work in pairs to complete rows 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so when we have p over q, similar to when we had the x before, we have a p and a q value here. We're just going to plug in these values for p and q. So for p over q, p equals 12, q equals 3, so that is going to give us 4. And that's positive because everything here is positive, right? So now for the next one, that's going to go here, by the way. I can't write on this board for some reason, but. So now we're going to look at the next one, right? I'm just going to put p and q so everyone knows. And then negative p over q. So we have a negative p over q. So we're going to apply that negative to our 12 and get negative 12 over 3. So can anyone tell me what we should get here as an answer? Perfect. Negative 4. Now p over negative q. So we have p over negative q. So our p is going to stay the same. It's going to stay positive. And our negative q, we're going to apply the negative to the 3 because our q is 3. So that's going to give us a negative 4. Now for the next one, we have negative p over q. So we're going to keep the negative outside for right now, and we're going to plug in the p and q, 12 over 3 in our parentheses, and that's going to give us a negative 4. So we're keeping the negative outside, we're dividing this, so you can look at it like that first in the parentheses, but essentially that's still just going to equal negative 4. Does anyone have any questions about that one? I know it's a little different than everything that we've done so far. Okay, perfect. So now we have negative p over q, negative q. I'm going to put it down here just to make sure you can see. And that's going to be negative 12 over negative 3. And now what happens when we divide a negative by a negative? The negatives cancel out and we are left with a positive. So we have positive 4, excuse me. So does everyone understand how we completed that first row? Okay, great. So now you could pair up, work with a partner, and I would like you to complete rows 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. So we're gonna fill in the answers for the rest of the rows. If I could have volunteers come up and do so. Just imagine. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Perfect. Great job, everyone.